I never meant to stand so close to her. Or maybe I did, I'm not sure anymore. All I know is the air between us had thinned, like even breathing too deeply might give me away. She was leaning against the edge of the kitchen counter, the late light from the window softening her face. I should have been looking anywhere else, the clock, the floor, the half-empty coffee cup, but my eyes kept pulling back to her. Her hand rested near mine. Not touching. Just there, enough to make me aware of every nerve in my body. When she shifted, her fingers brushed against the back of my hand, lightly, casually, as though it meant nothing. But I couldn't move. "You're too quiet," she said, her voice low, almost teasing. I shrugged, trying to sound careless, though my chest felt tight. "You talk enough for both of us." Her laugh was soft, a little surprised, and it made my stomach twist. She had that kind of laugh that stayed in a room after the sound was gone. For a moment either of us moved. Her perfume, faint, like something warm and clean, lingered in the air. I caught myself watching the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. A small gesture, but it felt impossibly intimate. She turned her head, her eyes meeting mine longer than they should have. "You feel too good," she said suddenly, like the thought slipped out before she could stop it. I froze. My mouth was dry, my pulse loud in my ears. And then I heard myself whisper back, "Then don't let go." The silence that followed pressed heavy against my skin. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned just slightly closer, enough that I could see the faintest lines near her eyes, the kind that only came from a life fully lived. They didn't make her look older, they made her look real. Human. Her hand shifted again, this time deliberate, her fingers grazing mine with the lightest pressure. It wasn't a grip, not yet, but it was contact. And I was terrified of breaking it. "I shouldn't," she started, but her words broke apart. Her voice trailed into the space between us, unfinished. "You already are," I murmured before I could think better of it. Her lips parted as if to reply, but no words came. She just stood there, watching me, her breath catching slightly. I thought I saw her throat tighten like she was swallowing down something heavier than words. The room was too quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock on the wall. I wanted to say something to cut through it, but nothing felt right. So instead I did the only thing I could, I stayed still, giving her the choice. Her fingers lingered against mine, then curled, almost instinctively, like she wasn't ready to release me. It was nothing more than a brush of skin, but it felt like a confession. My chest ached with how badly I wanted to close the space between us, to say the things hovering in the air unspoken. But before either of us could move, before the moment could tip too far, the sound of the front door opening shattered the stillness. We both flinched, her hand snapping back as though the touch had burned her. She looked at me, startled, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. I didn't move. I just stood there, pulse racing, with the ghost of her touch still burning across my skin. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if we'd ever get the chance to finish what had just begun. The sound of the door closing faded down the hall, leaving us stranded in the silence it had torn open. She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she reached for her coffee, though it had long gone cold, and lifted it just to set it back down untouched. "You should be careful with things like that," she said finally, her voice steady, though her fingers gripped the cup a little too tightly. "Things like what?" I asked, though I already knew. She shook her head, a small smile flickering at the corner of her mouth before vanishing. "You're too young to understand." The words stung, but I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong about the years between us. 20-something stacked against mid-40s, a distance people would point out before anything else. Still, the way she said it felt less like dismissal and more like protection, as if she were reminding herself. Her past lingered in the room like an invisible presence. I didn't know every detail, but I knew enough: a divorce years ago, no children, a house too quiet for someone who hated silence. She filled it with little things, books stacked high, the smell of coffee always in the air, soft music humming low. It wasn't loneliness she carried so much as the memory of it, The habit of solitude pressed into her like a second skin. "You think I don't understand loneliness?" I said quietly. Her eyes flicked up to mine then, sharp, like I'd caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I could almost see the thought she was holding back, the one she wouldn't let herself speak. She moved past me, her shoulder grazing mine. The contact was brief, accidental at first, but when she lingered just half a second longer than necessary, it felt deliberate. My breath caught, though I tried to cover it with a cough. I noticed things I shouldn't. The faint perfume clinging to her sweater, the soft warmth of her arm brushing mine as she reached for the cupboard, the way she stood just close enough that I could feel her presence without looking. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said suddenly, her back still to me. "Like what?" "Like I'm—" She trailed off, exhaling sharply. "Like I'm not old enough to be your—" She stopped herself again, shaking her head. I stepped closer before I could think better of it. My hand hovered near her shoulder, then rested there lightly. Not a grip, just a touch. Her sweater was soft under my palm, but it was the stillness beneath it, the way she didn't move away, that undid me. Her breath hitched, subtle but unmistakable. Either of us spoke. My hand stayed where it was, her body held perfectly still beneath it, and the air between us grew too thick to breathe. When she finally turned her head, her eyes met mine, wide and uncertain. And in that pause, with my hand on her shoulder and her silence wrapped around me, I knew something had shifted. Not forward, not back. Just closer. It happened later that week. Evening had settled heavy across the house, the kind of stillness that makes every sound seem louder than it should. She was standing at the sink, rinsing out a glass, when I came in. Her hair was loose tonight, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Something about seeing her that way, less composed, less guarded, made my chest tighten. "You shouldn't keep coming by like this," she said without turning, as if she'd been waiting for me. "And yet," I murmured, leaning against the doorway, "you don't tell me to leave." She set the glass down harder than necessary, water splashing over her wrist. I saw her jaw tighten before she finally faced me. "You think this is a game?" I shook my head. "No. I think you're the only part of my day that feels real." Her lips parted, but before she could answer, the vibration of her phone on the counter cut through the air. A name lit up on the screen, someone I didn't recognize. She glanced at it, then at me, and for a moment I thought she might answer. Instead, she silenced the call, pushing the phone face down. That silence between us stretched, heavier than ever. She moved past me to the living room, brushing against me in a way that wasn't quite accidental. I followed, though part of me knew I shouldn't. She sat on the couch, pulling a blanket over her lap like armor. I dropped down beside her, too close, feeling the warmth of her thigh near mine. "You make this harder than it should be," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Harder for who?" I asked. Her gaze snapped up, locking on mine. For a second, either of us blinked. Her hand was resting on the blanket, inches from mine. I shifted, closing the gap, my pinky brushing against hers. The smallest touch, but she didn't move away. The world outside the window felt miles away. All I could hear was her breathing, shallow and uneven, matching mine. I leaned in before I realized what I was doing. Close enough to see the faint tremor of her lips, close enough that her perfume tangled with the air I breathed. Her eyes flickered to my mouth, then back up, and that was all it took for my pulse to break into a sprint. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the space between us had thinned to almost nothing. Then, the front door creaked. A voice called from the hallway, muffled but close. She jerked back, nearly knocking the blanket to the floor. My heart slammed against my ribs as the voice drew nearer, then faded, someone heading upstairs, oblivious. We both sat frozen, breathless, the moment shattered but not gone. Her hand was still beneath mine, trembling faintly. "See?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "This is why we can't." But she didn't pull her hand away. If anything, her fingers curled tighter against mine, betraying her words. And in that fragile grip, I felt it. We were closer than ever, even in our resistance. The night dragged longer than either of us meant it to. Rain tapped against the windows, steady, unrelenting, filling the silence that neither of us dared to break. She sat curled on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, a glass of wine untouched on the table. I paced once, then stopped, unable to sit still. My chest felt too tight. Every time her eyes flicked toward me, I forgot how to breathe. Finally, she sighed, almost frustrated. "You can't keep looking at me like that." "Like what?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. "Like I'm something you want." The last word was whispered, barely audible. I swallowed hard. "Maybe I do." Her lips parted, but no protest came this time. Only silence, the kind that throbbed with everything unspoken. I crossed the room before I knew what I was doing. She didn't move. When I sank onto the couch beside her, the cushion dipped, pulling us closer. Her shoulder brushed mine, light as a spark. Her breath hitched when I reached up, slowly, to push a strand of hair from her face. My fingers grazed her temple, her skin warm beneath my touch. She closed her eyes for the briefest second, like she wanted to lean into it. "You're too young," she whispered, though her body leaned closer. "Then tell me to stop." My words trembled more than I wanted them to. Her hand moved, not away, but toward me, catching my wrist gently as if to hold it in place. The softness of her grip, the way her thumb brushed against my skin, undid me. I leaned in, my forehead almost touching hers. Her perfume wrapped around me, subtle and intoxicating. The warmth of her breath fanned against my lips, close enough that I could feel the tremor in it. "This can't," she started, but her voice broke. Her eyes lifted to mine, shining with something raw, something she was too afraid to name. "Then why are you still holding on?" I whispered back. Her grip on my wrist tightened. She didn't answer. The clock ticked in the background, each second a reminder that we were balanced on a line neither of us could step back from. My hand slipped lower, brushing against her jaw, cradling her face. Her skin was impossibly soft, and the way she tilted ever so slightly into my palm made my chest ache. We hovered there, breath mingling, eyes locked, trembling on the edge. I could feel her heart in the way her body tremored against mine, could hear the quiet plea in the silence she refused to break. And then, she whispered it, so faint I almost didn't catch it. "If you kiss me, everything changes." I froze, lips a breath away from hers. The rain hammered harder against the glass, the room thick with electricity. And I didn't know if I had the strength to stop. The storm hadn't let up. Rain lashed against the windows, shadows shifting across the room in restless patterns. We were still close, too close, after her whispered warning. The space between us was fragile, a glass about to crack. And then it did. "I knew," she said suddenly, pulling back just enough to look at me. Her voice was low, strained. "I knew the whole time what you were doing." I blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" Her eyes flickered, guilt flashing across them before she looked away. "You think I didn't notice? The way you kept showing up. Lingering. Watching me like I was some secret you weren't supposed to touch." Heat crawled up my neck. I opened my mouth, then shut it again, caught between denial and confession. She stood quickly, brushing past me, and the sweep of her body against mine sent a jolt straight through me. She gripped the back of the chair, knuckles white, as though she needed it to stay upright. "I let you," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't stop you. That's my lie. I told myself it was harmless, that I was too old, that nothing would ever come of it. But every time you looked at me..." She stopped, pressing her lips together hard, trembling in the silence. My chest ached. "So you felt it too." Her head shook once, a weak denial, but her hands betrayed her, clenching, unclenching, restless. "It's wrong." People would talk. They'd say I should know better. And maybe they'd be right. I stood, closing the distance between us before I could stop myself. My hand brushed against hers on the chair, a whisper of contact. She flinched, but didn't move away. "I don't care what they'd say," I said softly. I only care if you keep pretending. Her breath caught, sharp and shaky. Slowly, she turned toward me. Her eyes searched mine, raw and unguarded, as though she was afraid of what she might find there. The distance between us collapsed when she stepped forward, not quite touching, but so close I could feel the heat radiating off her. Her hand rose halfway, trembling, then faltered in the air before brushing against my chest. The touch was fleeting, but it stole the air from my lungs. Her fingers curled against my shirt, like she couldn't decide whether to pull me closer or push me away. This is the last time, she whispered, though her body leaned toward me. I shook my head, my hand rising to cover hers, pressing it against me. You don't believe that? Her lips parted, a soft exhale brushing across my cheek. The storm roared louder outside, as if urging us forward. And then she made the decision for both of us, her hands sliding higher, resting over my heart, her eyes locking with mine in a silent dare. Everything else fell away. The fear, the guilt, the hesitation. We were already too far gone. The storm had quieted to a drizzle, the sound of raindrops soft against the glass. But inside, the air was heavier than ever. She stood in front of me, her hands still against my chest, her eyes wide, unblinking. This is the part where we stop, she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. I leaned closer, my breath brushing her hairline. Then stop me. Her chest rose sharply, but she didn't move. My hand slid up, cupping the side of her face, my thumb grazing her cheekbone. She trembled under the touch, and her lips parted in the smallest surrender. Don't, she breathed, but her body tilted closer, betraying her words. I can't pretend anymore, I said softly, my forehead pressing against hers. The closeness was unbearable. Her perfume, the warmth of her breath, the way her fingers twisted in my shirt like she was holding on for balance. Silence stretched, thick and trembling. Then, in a voice that broke like glass, she confessed. I haven't felt wanted in years. The words pierced me. My other hand found her waist, tentative, as if asking permission. She didn't push me away. Instead, she leaned into me, her head tilting just enough that our lips hovered a breath apart. It would have been easy then, one movement, and we'd be past the point of no return. But she pulled back slightly, eyes searching mine with a desperate edge. Do you understand what this means? She asked. Yes, I whispered. It means we stop lying to ourselves. Her breath shuddered out, and then, finally, she closed the distance. The kiss wasn't smooth or careful. It was messy, aching, the kind of kiss that carried all the restraint we tried to hold and failed. Her hands slid up to my shoulders, pulling me closer, while mine anchored her at the waist, terrified she'd vanish if I let go. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads pressed together, both of us breathless, the room spinning with the weight of what we'd done. She laughed once, short and sharp, like she couldn't believe herself. Then her laughter dissolved into silence, her eyes glistening. We can't go back. I don't want to, I said without hesitation. Her thumb brushed across my jaw, a tender gesture against the storm inside us. She looked at me, not with the guardedness she always carried, but with something raw, unmasked. And in that moment, we both knew the choice had been made. Desire won. Fear lost. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The storm outside gave way to stillness, as if the world itself had shifted. For the first time, there was no distance left between us. The house was quiet again, the storm nothing more than a soft drizzle slipping down the windows. But inside, everything felt different. We were still on the couch, close enough that our knees touched. Neither of us had spoken for a long time. Words seemed too fragile for the moment. She leaned back, letting out a shaky breath, her hair falling loose around her face. I don't know what happens now, she admitted softly. I shifted closer, letting my hand find hers on the cushion. She stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed, her fingers curling into mine. The touch was tentative, almost childlike in its honesty. You don't have to know, I said. We'll figure it out. Her eyes flicked to mine, uncertain. People will talk. They'll say I should know better, that you should be with someone else. Let them talk, I murmured. They don't get to decide what feels right. She smiled faintly at that, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You make it sound so simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, I said, brushing my thumb over her knuckles. It's just you and me right now. That's enough. For a moment, she just looked at me, studying my face as if searching for cracks in my certainty. Whatever she saw must have eased her, because she leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. The weight of her there, warm, steady, real, filled me with something I couldn't name. Not excitement. Not even victory. Just a deep, quiet relief. I feel ridiculous, she murmured into my shirt. 40-something, hiding like a teenager. I laughed softly, tilting my head against hers. Then we'll be ridiculous together. Her body shook with quiet laughter, and the sound softened everything. She lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine again, this time without the wall she usually carried. Slowly, I leaned in and pressed a kiss to her forehead. She closed her eyes at the touch, her hand tightening around mine. It wasn't a desperate kiss, not the kind we'd shared before. It was steadier. A promise, not a question. We sat like that, hands intertwined, her head resting against me, the silence no longer heavy but calm. Safe. I'm scared, she whispered finally. So am I admitted. But not enough to let go. Her hand squeezed mine at that, and I knew we had reached something solid, not perfect, not simple, but real. The rain outside eased into nothing, leaving only the quiet of the room and the rhythm of our breathing together. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no pulling back. We had chosen. And we were exactly where we were supposed to be. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?